In this video, you're going to learn what visual hierarchy is, how it's created, and how we can use it to create beautiful, well-composed designs. To do that, we'll explore the 5 rules that govern visual hierarchy. Now, what is visual hierarchy? Visual hierarchy is the order in which we notice elements in a design. And it's called hierarchy because we literally do rank elements by what we notice first, second, third, fourth, etc. We call an element that we want noticed first primary, or we say that it has primacy over other elements. Now, that isn't to say that one element is more important or more essential to a design than another, because in a great design, every element is absolutely essential, but the viewer will still have to look at things one at a time. Where they start and where they end is what hierarchy is all about. And that's why our first rule of visual hierarchy is this: hierarchy is designed to lead the viewer. Now, we rank things by primacy because if everything was equally important, then nothing would stand out. That's the reason we care about hierarchy at all. We can only have one element that's most important. We can only have a few elements that really get noticed. Most of our design, if it's going to be good, has to be relatively uniform. So the second rule of visual hierarchy is this: the number of elements and the primacy of elements are correlated. A few elements should come first, which give context to and support the rest of the design. And this is the reason understanding visual hierarchy is so important, because it's our job as designers to organize information in a way that's easy to understand and pleasant to look at. And we create this visual hierarchy by changing the values of the elements in our design, such as size, weight, or color, to give them primacy and build a structure to our design. Now, creating great visual hierarchy in any design comes down to 3 essential things: contrast, uniformity, and composition. Let's start with contrast. Contrast is the differences in an element that make it stand out. Contrast is also the way we know which elements have primacy in our design. Take, for example, a design that was just a bunch of dots. Which one is most important? Well, right now, they all look equally important. But what if we changed the size, color, and spacing of a single dot? Now it's obvious which dot we'll notice first because we've given it more contrast. So our third rule of visual hierarchy is this: there is no hierarchy without contrast. But how do we create contrast? Well, there's a million different ways that designers create contrast in their designs, but in this video we'll explore the 10 most important ways that we can create contrast that I've ranked in a list from what creates the most contrast to what creates the least contrast. Number 1, motion. The human eye, and by extension the human mind, is hardwired for motion. We track motion almost unconsciously because the human mind evolved to scan threats, essentially. And in the wild, anything that can move is potentially dangerous. Brain scans reveal that if an element is moving in our design, then it's bound to get noticed first. This is powerful, but usually less is more. If an element drains too much attention, or it's recognized as irrelevant or overly flashy, it's just gonna frustrate people. So generally we use motion to nudge people towards looking at an element, but once they're looking, the motion should either be minimal or stop altogether. 2. Task-related information. If the eye tracks first for the unknown, the second thing it looks for is what's known. This may sound counterintuitive, but people often don't look at the big, obvious, bold thing in a design. They look for what's important to them. When we want to do something or find something out, we tend to ignore pretty much everything else. For example, my whole family cooks a lot, and if you've ever looked up a recipe online, you'll know to basically automatically ignore 99% of the page, like the blog post image, the title, the cute story about their babushka, and just go straight for the jump to recipe button. And as designers, it's our job to align what's important in our design with what the visitor actually cares about. If you're designing a poster for an event, the event details should be clear and easy to find. If you're building a sales page, the checkout button and the price should be obvious. Ask yourself, or track with data if you can, what visitors actually want from your design, and then make that easy to find. 3. Focal points. The third thing we notice about a design is actually what's missing. In other words, the stuff that isn't there. This is called white space, which creates contrast by its absence. And when we place an object in the center of this white space, we create a focal point. So we can use white space to draw the eye towards the most important element in our design. With space to breathe, the eye naturally knows what to focus on. But if we crowd our object and get rid of all the white space in our design, then it starts to look more like a page out of Where's Waldo. Since the eye doesn't know what to look at first, we lose primacy and therefore the hierarchy in our design. 4. Humans and faces. Now, it should come as no surprise that humans notice other humans, specifically human faces, faster than pretty much everything else in a design. That's why so many adverts, magazine covers, posters, and websites will have a human face, real or illustrated, somewhere in their design. So a human face will draw attention to our design, but remember our second rule of hierarchy: Only one thing can come first, everything else comes after. That means sometimes including a person, especially if it's a stock image that has nothing to do with your product, can actually detract from the design. People might reflectively look at the face for a second, but ignore the headline. Instead of reading about a 20% off sale, they'll notice, a random person or a random stock photo and go on with their day. So we want to use faces carefully and only ever in the context of what your design is promoting. If you're selling guitar lessons, your model should be learning guitar or rocking out. But if you're promoting something like a bake sale, it might be best just to use pictures of baked goods instead of chefs. 5. Color. Color theory is an insanely deep topic that I made a whole video about, but if we want to use color to create contrast, the basic rule is that we move the color values away from each other on the color wheel. This generally means creating distance between light and dark values, or creating distance between hues. So for example, we might have a light color on a dark background, dark color on a light background, or we might have a single orange element against a blue background. In each case, we're creating distance between the colors on the color wheel. Now, WebAIM, which is an organization that focuses on accessibility on the web, creates a great color contrast calculator. They say we want to aim for a contrast ratio of 4.5 or higher if you want one element to pop against the background or to be visually distinct from other elements. Now, in this case, the contrast ratio is talking about relative luminance, or the perceived lightness value of a design, and we want that to be at least 4.5 times brighter than the background. Now, this is especially useful for text legibility, but if you're designing a graphic against a differently colored background, you don't actually have to change the luminance at all. In a case like this, changing the hue will also give you contrast. Although to be fair to WebAIM, if you don't change the luminance value at all, then it will be less accessible for people with color vision deficiency. Now, one final note on color science, because I find it so interesting, the color that stands out the most to the human eye is actually red. The meaning behind every other color is relatively subjective. It's either cultural or context dependent. But we all have circuits in our brain which specifically look for the color red. Now, there's different theories about why this is, but red essentially signals to the brain to pay attention, which is why it's used with everything from stop signs to fashion. 6. Size. The size of elements in a design, of course, plays an important role in what gets noticed first. For example, simply increasing the size of a headline makes visitors more likely to read it first, even if it's in a slightly awkward position. But like everything else on our list, size is relative to the other elements in our design. If everything is big, then nothing stands out. So it's not about making some elements huge if you want them to get noticed, but about using their contrasting sizes to create a hierarchy. A headline only has to be a little bit bigger to be read visually as a headline, and a paragraph only has to be a little bit smaller to be read after the headline. 7. Weight. Weight is essentially the thickness of an element, and like size, points viewers towards what to look at and gives your design structure. Take this example heading and paragraph. Although by its placement and size you probably know to read the headline first, you might miss the hidden structured list. But if we change the weight of our more important text, it guides the eye down our paragraph and makes organizing information easier. The great thing about adjusting weight is that it's not insanely attention-grabbing like motion, so we can use it to guide the visitor down an article or give them an easy way to scan for useful information without messing up our hierarchy. 8. Imagery. We've talked about faces already, but other kinds of imagery is also likely to grab attention and add contrast in our design. Images can make fantastic secondary elements in a design because they support and add context to other elements. For example, in this hero section by PopSite, you read the text first, and then you see the website mockups as supporting evidence for their headline's claim. Imagery can also be primary in a design, where we understand the context in relation to the image. But just like faces, we want to use images relatively sparingly. If the images are completely irrelevant, or there's 100 of them, then the eye doesn't know what to focus on, and we lose that sense of visual hierarchy. 9. Extra elements. Another great way to add contrast to a design is simply by adding extra elements that break a pattern in some way. For example, we can add a tag like best value above some pricing cards to make one card stand out. Adding extra elements to a design is a subtle way of increasing the contrast that's not likely to break the structural harmony you've already established. So if you've got a row of things that are all relatively equally important, but you want one to be noticed first, then adding an extra element like a border or a tag can be a great way to do that. 10. Misalignment. Finally, the last common way designers add contrast to their work is through misalignment. Remember, anything out of place tends to get noticed. So if we nudge an element out of place slightly, it draws the eye towards it. Now we do have to be careful with this because our end goal is a visually pleasing design, not just, randomly adding contrast. So if we take this too far and misalign too many items, we might lose the flow of the design. But just taking one element and moving it to the quote-unquote wrong place can add to the contrast and often the interest and the intrigue of the final design. I should also mention that this is a beginner video. Like I said before, there's a million different subtle ways you can add contrast to a design, but these are far and away the most common. Now, contrast, and by extension hierarchy, would be nothing without uniformity. Remember, if everything's different, then nothing stands out. We need a repeatable and predictable layout for most of the elements in our design if we want people to actually be able to read and comprehend it. So our fourth rule of visual hierarchy is this: uniformity gives structure to our design. But how do we add structure and uniformity without making most of the design boring? After all, we don't just want a few elements that look awesome, that are big and bold with cool colors and motion, while all the rest of our design looks lame. Luckily, there's a better way. The secret to uniformity lies in predictability. You can make an element look exactly how you want, so long as the other elements of the same type share the same values. Let me give you an example to illustrate this more clearly. Imagine you're designing a website section that lays out the benefits of a product. You've got a headline, a subtitle, and a few cards. Now, because each card is equally important, we don't want any one of them to really stand out with a ton of contrast. Instead, we actually want the whole row of cards to look like a unified section. This adds visual harmony, which balances out the high contrast headline. So how do we do that? Well, what we should do is give each element in the cards the exact same values. Each image should be the same size. Each card title should use the same font with the same font size and the same font weight. Each paragraph should be exactly the same, even taking up the same height. Even the card should have the exact same border color and corner radius. If we want to change one value, like the font weight of the card titles, we should change it for each card title. This practice is called cohesion, and it's the reason some designs look perfectly balanced, in harmony, and other designs look messy and all over the place. So the secret to good visual hierarchy is a balance of contrast and uniformity. Now that we understand what hierarchy is and how it works, the second part of this video will focus on how to use hierarchy to make great looking designs. Arranging elements in a visually pleasing and easy to read way is called composition. That's why the fifth rule of visual hierarchy is this: composition is key to great hierarchy. Now, in order to learn composition, let's start with what we know already, which is how to create hierarchy in the first place. We'll begin with an example design and work from there. Our first step is to arrange each element mentally by its primacy. What do we want visitors to see first, second, third, etc.? That gives us our hierarchy. Second, we'll use the tools we just learned about to add contrast to our important elements. Maybe we'll change the size, weight, color, and other values of certain elements in our design. Third, elements that are similar will get grouped together, which adds to the uniformity and cohesion of our design. Now finally, we're ready to get started with composition. Now the goal of composition is to arrange these elements using a pattern our viewers are naturally familiar with. We'll start with the most basic pattern of all: top to bottom. For most of the world, people are used to scanning things from the top of the page to the bottom of the page. But if your audience tends to scan things from the bottom to the top, we just reverse this pattern. But if most people scan from top to bottom, then an easy way to arrange elements in our design is simply to place them from top to bottom. We'll place the most important elements at the top and elements that need additional context underneath. To use a simple example, most landing pages which feature a video will have a headline up top and the video underneath. Even though we might think as designers that the video is more important than the headline, visitors need the headline to understand the context of the video. So again, hierarchy is not the decision of what's essential in the design, but simply what visitors should see first, second, third, etc. Another common viewing pattern that we have is from left to right. For audiences that read from left to right, this is how they're used to scanning information. And of course, if your audience is used to reading from right to left, then we just reverse this pattern. But if they are used to scanning from left to right, then a great way to easily create a scannable design is simply to arrange your design from most important to least important, left to right. Now, if we combine these two patterns, we notice an interesting habit. Most people, at least in much of the West, scan from left to right and top to bottom. This gives us our third pattern of composition, often called the Z pattern. With more minimalist designs, people often scan first from left to right and then from top to bottom. So an easy way to create a great composition is to arrange your elements along this Z shape. We'll place our most important element in the top left, in this case a headline and subtitle combo, then we'll support it with an image. Finally, underneath that, we'll place cards. People find this pattern very easy to scan, and once you notice it, you'll start to see it everywhere. Now, the Z pattern isn't the only pattern that takes advantage of our natural viewing habits. For more text-heavy designs, people like to scan your designs just like they read books, that being from top to bottom first and then from left to right. This is called the F pattern, and it's the most common on the web, where text is likely to take up more of a design than, say, a poster or a billboard. In our example, we might have a website with a headline, a subtitle, and our cards underneath, with a supporting graphic on the right. Just like with our other patterns, our elements are arranged by their hierarchy. In other words, what we want visitors to notice first, second, third, etc. We're simply adapting our composition to the medium of our audience. On a poster or a billboard or more minimalist designs, the Z pattern might be more effective. In a letter or a card that you send to somebody, top to bottom might be most effective. And on the web, generally the F pattern, at least for the first sections of designs, tend to be the most common because they are effective. So now you know what hierarchy is, how it works, and how to use it to create great compositions. If you want to watch another beginner guide just like this, like I said, I made a full video on color science and color theory for complete beginners, which you can check out here. And if you'd like free design tips sent to your inbox every single week, then you can click the first link in the description below to sign up for my newsletter. But that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.